if you heard about something called the Safe Working Group in Cloud Native in CNCF, this is basically the same group. We've gone through some rebranding, rename, and now we're officially a SIG, which is great. So yeah, in this session, I'm going to talk a little bit more about what exactly we are, what we're trying to do, as well as ways that you can involve in. Yeah. So what exactly is SIG security? So CNCF SIG security is a group, and our main vision really is to, part of it is to increase the posture of security across cloud native in general. Another thing that we are hoping to be able to do is to be able to make it so that whenever a developer, end user, or operator, or an auditor talks about creating a cloud native application or solution, they should be comfortable with knowing what exactly is the security risk, what are steps I can take to mitigate certain risks within my security solution. So we do this in three areas. One is to be able to observe the entire CNCF landscape and look at areas where we need to have better security or have a bit more focus on. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. The second thing that we're doing is we want to be able to have a common understanding of tools. So what we do, part of what we do are assessments. Basically, what we have is we look at certain security-focused projects in CNCF. We do a review of them, and then we give a little bit about, here's the threat model that you should be looking at when you're looking at using this product or using this project. So these are things you should consider. These are things if you're using this, these are things that you get from it. These are things that you don't get from it. I'll go into more detail later. And the third focus area for this group is also around kind of audit and compliance. And we often get this issue where auditors come to us and we say that, oh, sorry. Okay. Hello, this is Ben. Okay. So the third point, which is around audit, right? So there are several customers that come to us or just vendors in general, and they say that auditors that look at cloud native solutions and architecture don't really know how to assess the security of it. And this is something that is fairly new, and auditors still have some trouble in understanding how risk has changed when you introduce something like a CI/CD process with containers. What's the isolation in that regard? So these are the kind of the focus areas of the group. A little bit of history. So this the Safe Working Group started in December 2017 from a casual conversation between a couple of folks, and we started the initial Safe Working Group, which is now called SIG Security. And we started with this idea of, okay, we're going to identify all the different personas and use cases in cloud native in terms of security. All right. So we continue on this. We merged with the policy working group, which there's going to be a talk later that I mentioned. So they're looking at kind of what should cloud native policies be? What are the policies which has security considerations? How does SPIFFE, how does OPA, how do these projects get integrated with it? And later down the road, around last year in August 2018, we created a PR for CNCF considerations, and thanks to our chairs and our sponsors at the TOC, we were able to get the SIG status in June of this year. So we are a fairly new SIG, but we have quite a good amount of participation. So right now we have 45 members. It's kind of a diverse set of members. We have people from cloud vendors, we have security providers, we have end users, financial users, and so on. Right? So a lot of representation. There's a lot of good security discussion that goes along. And it really is a very open community. Basically, we do everything from GitHub. So I'm going to talk about 2 or 3 focus areas that we've been putting work into over the past year. So one of it is landscape. So some of you may be familiar with the CNCF landscape. So this, if you've seen this like big picture with a ton of different logos on the same page, basically classifying, okay, what is this cloud native technology? Where should it be? Is it orchestration? Is it runtime? Whatever. All right. So with SIG security, we want to do a similar thing for security, right? So we want to be able to have a bit more of a fine-grained control of or classification of what security project is, right? Is it something to do with identity? Is it something to do with privacy? And once we are able to classify all the projects into different areas, we can kind of see the gaps and see, oh, this is where more projects should be, or this is somewhere that we should put more interest in. Another thing which sets us apart from the general CNCF landscape that we're trying to push for is that with the CNCF landscape, the scope of it really is targeted at the CNCF projects themselves. But with security, this is a little bit different because a lot of the security projects that I use in production or in solutions actually are generic security solutions. So like key management systems like Vault, anything in the C groups, namespaces, in the Linux kernel, those are all generic security projects, but they're not necessarily cloud native, but they are still important in the ecosystem for security. So we have kind of a draft of all these things. They're moving forward. If you are interested in helping with anything, the issues I put all on the slide. So if you want to just click into it, you can kind of see what the details that we've already drawn up are. And also, if you want to contribute, we are definitely very open to that. Okay. So the second thing I want to talk a little bit about is security assessments. Security assessments is something that I'm more involved with. And the idea here is that we're looking at some of, for starters, we're looking at some of the security focused projects. So the idea here is three things. One is we want to look at cloud native security projects or projects in general and make sure they have good security posture. So this we ensure that do you have a proper CI? Do you do scanning of your images and so on? On top of that, we ensure that all the projects have a security process. So for example, do they have a process for if there's a vulnerability discovered in a project, is there a security team and what is their response time like? So on top of that, what we do, which I'll show you a bit more details later, is that we really understand what are the threat models and how they form a part of the architecture. So we started with 2 this year, and they are almost complete. So the first is In Total. In Total is a kind of signature verification mechanism which validates certain processes within the container supply chain, right? To ensure that you have scanning, you have your signing done, maybe you have encryption, certain compliance steps that you want to perform. OPA, which is Open Policy Agent, some of you may be familiar, may have heard that. It's basically a policy language and a policy service that allows you to encode policies and make decisions on them. So what we do is we work with the maintainers and the security team of the individual projects, and we what ends up the process is that we go through, maybe it's usually about 2 to 3 weeks. The main aim of this is to get a general consensus of the security of a project. And what the result of this is we get this document. So I'm just gonna switch here. So this is the CNCF SIG security page. We're on GitHub, and if there's basically a ton of information here, and everything we have really are in the issues. So if you go to the issues labeled with assessments, right, you can see a couple here. So we have OPA and In Total. So if we look at the OPA one, we end up with this document, which we think that is really helpful for end users, vendors, or operators, right? So the document starts are really generic with kind of what is this project, what is it trying to provide in terms of security. So like a little bit of background and stuff on the goals that it's trying to achieve in terms of security, non-goals and so on. And so these things are kind of very straightforward. You can find it in the repo. But what I think is really interesting for general users, if you go down into the document, what we do is we perform the security analysis. So basically, we're trying to identify, what are the main things that you have to look out for, right? So in this case, we talk about, okay, what are certain attacker scenarios that could happen if if this component is going to be breached within your solution or your cluster. What are the things that you have to consider? What are the mitigating steps you can take from there onwards? Right. So we go into a few details about, okay, so what are the attack surfaces? What are the things that the project could do better in the short term, in the long term, whether it's enforcing better defaults, whether it's providing better education to users that this is something that the platform provides, and certain things you should not assume. So this document contains a lot of interesting stuff, and we also have some notes on what are some of the defaults that you should use. So another one I kind of want to share about is in total over here. So an example of how this would be useful is that if we look at so this talks about what if you have a key compromise, what happens, what's the implications of it. And another thing that I think is really useful here is for certain components. So certain projects rely on certain other components. So in the case of InTotal, it relies on some kind of storage, verifiable storage for the signatures that it creates, or the content blocks that it creates. And so like this document will talk about, okay, what are the different trade-offs, what are the different implications, what are the considerations you need to look at if you're going to choose a different type of backend for storage. Right? So we see this document as a way to help assess the security, to help the project grow in terms of increasing its security posture, but also as a document that users can take a look at and really understand something about the project in terms of security. All right. So we have a couple of security assessments that are coming up. There's one that's going to be on Falco, one that's going to be on Keycloak, and possibly Harbor. So these are the 3 projects that we're looking at. If you're interested in participating in security assessments, do ping us on Slack, give us a shout out on the mailing list, and also put your name down on the issue. So another thing that's been going on is a policy white paper. So this is not something I'm very involved with. So I don't know if Zipeng is here. He's the one that's really driving this. He's part of the policy work group. And he's going to have a deep dive about the Kubernetes policy work group. And I think he may talk a little bit about this white paper that we're writing. But if you go to this issue and you click through, there's going to be a document talking about, what are the details of the white paper. All right, this is not loading, so I'm going to skip this. All right, so a few things that are coming out is, one, we also have, on top of the policy paper, we are also writing a more generic security white paper. So what this white paper is going to talk about is, what is, how do you do security in cloud native, It's not going to be something specific to Kubernetes. It's not going to be something specific to certain runtimes, certain products. It's really, from an auditor perspective or from a security perspective, what are the base things that you have to secure? What are things they need? Like you need some kind of DevOps pipeline, some kind of verification, runtime verification. So this is something that is coming up. It's something that's already in progress. Like I said, the policy white paper is also ongoing. Another big thing that we have is the SIG security microsite. So there's been a lot of ideas around providing education about security. So one of the things that we talk about is the types of vulnerabilities that we generally see in cloud native applications. So one example is the talk error, the time of check to time of use errors, right? If an object is modified in between where the value we can't make assumptions about, generally we see quite a few of those type of vulnerabilities. So the microsite is going to serve a few purposes. So one of it is to put on articles that share about, here are the types of attacks, here are what you should look at, here's how to mitigate them and how to do it right. We also hope to put more information of how to use certain security tools and security projects, and just security posture articles in general. And last but not least, what I mentioned before, we have in total OPA, we're almost done. Falco, that security review is going to be led by Justin Cormack. I'm going to be looking at Keycloak and possibly Harbor. We are still unsure on that. We have to talk to the maintainers. So I'm just going to keep it short so we can talk if after this or you have any questions. You can find us on GitHub. Everything that we have is on GitHub. You shouldn't be able to not find any information. You just have to click through a lot of links. And then you can join us on the Slack. We're on the CNCF Slack now with the SIG security channel. Unfortunately, we meet every week, but we also understand that it's really difficult to find a time for everyone to meet. So unfortunately, our meeting times are do not work as well with Europe and the Asia area. But what usually happens is the meetings are not compulsory. And what happens is, like, if you're interested in security assessment, for example, then we'll form a small group of 3 to 4 people, and they find a good time to meet by themselves. Right? So if you look at the GitHub and the notes on the meetings, meetings are really about what's going on, updates from different people, but a lot of the work in the group actually happens offline. All right. Thank you so much for coming, and do let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
This is from HP, and I had many conversations with our security architect in our company, and I can fully understand the security people always like the policies, right, the rules. So I'm more interested in, on the how piece, right, how we can address all these security risks and vulnerabilities more than you just tell us, don't do that, right?
So a couple of things. So that is something that we are looking at in the general white paper. So if you go to I can't type. Hold on. So if you look into the issue, we have a security overview white paper. This is the one I'm talking about. So we are currently in progress to talk about, okay, here are the things that you have to secure. Here are some possible ideas or projects. You can look at it. So yeah, so here's an example, right? This is really, really rough draft. This is something that we're going to work on next. So the idea is, compute definition of security. What are the tools and resources that you can use to help in that? How do you get compliance from that? How do you do runtime enforcement and things like that? So I think these are some of the questions that kind of you're talking about that may be useful if we provide some insight on that as well. And of course, like the things on network file storage and stuff like that. So the group generally has quite a few people that have also very strong opinions. So we are very happy to hear more from different people. I think it's really good if we have a discussion on, what are some perspectives on. So another thing is, financial users may have different requirements from other types of users. So, it's one of the things to consider. Maybe we can talk about, or should we have multiple tiers of security and compliance? If you're a regular user, maybe you should do these 1, 2, 3. But if maybe 4, 5, 6 isn't really for you, unless you are, for example, working with credit card information and need PCI or something like that. So this is something that's still being worked on. We'll be super happy if if your team or your architect wants to talk about this with us. Every perspective definitely helps. Yeah, I hope that addresses. Sorry? Oh yeah. So what I would recommend doing is, so if you just like drop go to GitHub issue and say you're interested in this, and then this we'll follow up the issue. So we work very ad hoc. So we'll follow up the issue, and also so this one I think is owned by Sarah, who is one of our chairs. So if you ping her on the Slack channel, I think she will get in touch with you as well. You mean the six? Oh, me? Oh, I'm located in New York. Yeah. Any more questions? Okay, thank you.